Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This week, a show I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Upload, Season 2, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we have that opening that is, or at least picking up with Nora's circumstances, where, once again, that difference of opinion she has from Mateo, where, once again, she is a lot more optimistic and believes, that there is this whole upload thing isn't inherently evil. Yes, there's an issue with the system, but the fact of the matter is it is something that everyone should be taking part of. It's like, oh, your grandma being able to kind of have a place, being like kind of like a community that she can gather around and stuff like that. Because Mateo's just looking at it, it's like, oh yeah, you just want to stuff your grandma in an attic. I guess she'd be basically saved on a hard drive and you put it in a web, she's out of the way. I guess when you actually think about it, it almost feels like that's supposed to be like a direct parallel to putting like a grandparent or an older parent in like a retirement home or assisted living home, which obviously is necessary in some occasions. But it feels like they're trying to try. It seems like he's almost equating that almost like an out of sight, not of mind. Once again, he already made it clear last episode he doesn't view uploads as people. Once again, the moment you're uploaded, you're no longer a person anymore. You're just ones and zeros. You're just constructs and data. But either way, like that, he just says, yeah, I wish the world saw it the way you do, but that's kind of not how, we should be seeing eye to eye on this, but she's like, we don't. And so I love that he's like, okay, like he thought she was going to sleep somewhere, but she's like, no, this is for you. He's like, oh, the pillow's for me. She's like, yeah, so you can sleep in the hallway. And then as he's leaving Ivan's Roomba, it's just kind of like, oh, don't go, Mateo, I love you, baby, or something. Ivan's like, I knew it. And he's like, dude, I didn't bang your freaking mop or whatever. So, once again, and obviously, Nora's making a point, or at least around Nathan, to be like, yeah, no, everything's great between him and Mateo. It's like, she even talked to Alicia about it, and it's like, she's like, right, it's like she won't admit it, but it's also like, right, that spark her and Nathan have isn't there. It is the thing of, well, at least he's alive, so there's that. Her and Nathan were always going to be a complicated situation, but then you also add in they have a very strong difference of opinion, because our opinions more so lie where Nathan's is about it should be a privilege for everyone because they see the benefits of it, whereas Mateo, as well as a lot of people like Pastor Rob and a lot of the Luds, only see the negative downside of it, only see the pessimistic side. Once again, that's because of the systems that are in place that are controlling it, versus if things were different, if it was in the right hands. But I guess you could say that about anything in life, right? If only it was in the right hands, it'd be a plot. It could be, applicated in the right way. But even that doesn't always work out, because you give enough person and enough power and control and money in a situation, something like this, that is a money-making machine. There's a lot of value in it. Then eventually someone would get corrupted by it at some point in time down the line. So it's, once again, it's very nihilistic, I think, thought process potentially, but. I also love the conversation about because it's like Nathan suggests it might have been the Luds, but the Luds think it was actually Horizon who might have been behind some of this stuff. And now it's like, you don't think Horizon's capable of that? And Alicia's like, no, of course not. The slogan is literally, don't do evil, obviously. But then she's like, well, what if it actually means don't do evil? Obviously, as in, don't be obvious about you doing evil. And it's like, she's like, honestly, that's really crafty. That is the thing of that there are so many ways you could interpret that. You've been working here for a while, but punctuation can make a difference, but that punctuation could make you go oh, it obviously means this, when it has the underhanded belly of being, no, it's actually this very sinister thing. But in this episode too, they are, Horizons is, spreading out this, new thing called because it's the name of the episode. Is it Mind Frisk? I think is what it's called. Basically, they'll be able to listen to the thoughts of all their inhabitants. Because I even love they meant oh yeah, the terrible attack from Lud. Well, actually, it really wasn't that bad, but they've got all these security systems in place now, and now this gave them the excuse that it was something on the back burner, but now it's got moved to the forefront because now laws are shifting because of the Lud attack and allowing them to push this forward. But the problem is, the last thing they need is people like knowing Nathan's circumstances of, oh, he remembers that he was murdered and he has all his memories back, which is going to be a big target on his back. And if this is all there is to him, he's going to get deleted. I mean, he was almost killed wiped out last season. So don't want to kind of go through that again. So, and I love how that kind of like that mind Frisk situation ties into Luke's story, which is kind of the B plot of the episode, where he's going insane because he's like, oh, I know they're watching me, which is like, Nathan's calling him crazy, but it's like, well, we know he's not completely crazy because it's like, oh, the angels, like, there's too many occupants here. They can't watch everyone individually. Well, the fact of the matter is, sadly, Luke has a stalker, and we know it, and Alicia knows it. I guess if he talked about it more about, like, oh, I'm being watched, it's like, well, Alicia's not going to drop that info about Lucy, because it's like, I don't know if it's just, hey, I can see you squirm a little bit, so she's enjoying that, or just she doesn't want to blow her leverage that she has over Lucy right now. She doesn't want to take the chance anyone could be listening, and because if Luke becomes aware of it, then Lucy's going to find out, and that's no longer going to be, viable blackmail material if it's still something Alicia's going through in the future. I mean, it's still there, but to be fair, they returned a ring, but who, like, that has all that data, but who knows, who's to say they didn't, like, Alicia didn't make a copy before she returned it, right? Well, we'll have to wait and see on that front, but it's like, yeah, we already know he's not crazy, but then he starts talking like, oh, like, my dreams are being stolen, and I'm like, oh, okay, now he's going a little crazy. Turns out he's not, because this mind frisk stuff was already kind of in testing, and now they can be out there more in the open with it. It's going to be rolled out in the next couple of days, so it turns out Luke was right about this, and even Alicia's like, wow, the person who's usually wrong about these things actually turned out to be right, and it's like, yeah. And the worst part is they're monetizing it by they're selling their dreams. It's like, oh, if your dream is basically an action movie, we're going to sell it to Hollywood, which that feels almost, I picked a weird time to decide to watch this episode. I mean, I'm sure it was always going to be an issue, but obviously the conversation about AIs, like obviously the WGA, they weren't able to completely scrub the situation, but they've kind of pushed it back a little bit with the AI writing scripts and stuff like that. So it just feels so interesting that it's like, oh, it's taking someone's dream and then selling it to Hollywood. It just feels like, I don't know, it just feels a little kind of almost in the AI vein. Like, once again, like, those conversations are now more public this year because of the SAG-AFTRA and WGA strike, but I'm sure it was always kind of a conversation. Well, once again, it's like, it was a conversation apparently not a lot of people were like blaring the alarms about. Some people were, so it just makes you wonder. Like I said, I'm probably taking too much of the current circumstances and applying them to this, but it just seems like there's an interesting parallel you could draw there. But also, if it's not something like that, like an action movie, if it's kind of something sexy or whatever, you can like literally, they can like upload it as content because you are technically their intellectual property. Any thoughts you have are theirs as well. So it's like, man, that's wild. Without the real, I mean, I guess it's like, it's in that legal binding stuff of like, well, now that you are technically part of our intellectual property because of the whole upload system, but also because, well, this particular, like, everything that's uploaded here becomes part of their intellectual property, which includes everything you think, which they can, it's just, that's so wild and so messed up. And poor Luke is going crazy because of it. He's not going to sleep because he's too paranoid. Alicia wasn't going to get too involved in that, not going to be like, okay, Luke, you were right, because once again, I don't think she wants to give him the satisfaction knowing he's right. She's like, I'm fine with him kind of flowing off the deep end. I feel bad for him, but also I'm not going to stress myself about it. Not going to do anything that's going to impede my job until Luke not sleeping does impede her job, because it's like, cool, I need you to go to sleep, because if you don't, that could also be a problem in the future, because their memories get defragged while they sleep, and it's like, if you stay up that long, your memories aren't getting defragged, and you're basically going to overload and have system failure. So that's kind of a big no-no. But Alicia only got involved because she found out, hey, I'm personally involved in this because his dreams are being sold and uploaded on some naughty sites. So she's involved to the point she's being recognized. It's like, how long had these been? That's the thing. Alicia probably just, because they've been doing this to Luke for a while because he's been a little paranoid. He said, I haven't slept for the past 3 days. He only noticed it the past 3 days. Like, who knows how long they'd actually been rolling this out little by little. So, these Alicia videos, who knows? Because I'm about to say, like, that went super viral pretty quickly on some naughty sites to the point people are able to recognize her when she's walking down the street. At least one dude was. So, she was able to kind of trick Luke into going to sleep. By being like, oh, well, let's make it a reality, ha ha ha. Let's do something sexy and kind of spice up those dreams. The moment he hit the bed, he fell asleep. But you saw the look on her face where she was almost like, honestly, there's actually, once again, she's softening towards Luke little by little. But it didn't stop. The fact is that I think either it was an old dream or it seemed like that dream immediately I think the moment you're having those type of dreams or whatever, it automatically gets uploaded because she immediately got a notification and saw a new video of her in like a nurse's outfit or something. And I'm like, he just fell asleep. It's like, I guess it's like, it almost feels like those dreams are kind of probably being simultaneously, like, while you're having them, they're kind of being live streamed on certain sites. It must just be like an auto upload type of thing. That's just instantaneous. So maybe the process happens a lot faster than I thought. But either way, so all the while that's happening, like I said, that's the B plot of it all. But Nathan and Nora are trying to figure out, okay, so how do we approach this situation, because they've got to protect Nathan, because if they're able to use this, they'll find out about him having his memories back, and it's all doomed. So they end up sneaking into Craig's office because he's the one that's connected to that. He's got the system like locked away. So luckily they get into his office because his all of it's in the virtual reality. Specifically, it's at Lakeview. Basically, he has a copy of his office with the exception of like a kind of a sexy poster he has. I'm like, why? I guess that way you have something sexy to look at without being weird about like anything getting pulled up like on your computer. But you have like a virtual computer in front of you, but maybe because you're virtual, it doesn't work like that. But I'm like, why the post? That's what I thought, like we were going to find out there was something hidden behind the poster, but it's just like I'm going to put up something like this in my virtual office that looks exactly like my office. But either way, they ultimately end up getting into the Mind Frisk system and kind of see what it's fully capable of. That once again, you'd be able to even like write out what the person's thinking just as they're thinking. You basically subtitle it like a video, or you could just straight up hear the audio of the person's thoughts. And obviously they go with that. It predates it, but I always associate it with Inception, the whole conversation of how the subconscious works. You tell someone not to think about pink elephants, what do? They think about pink elephants. I associate that with Inception because that was the first time I heard that phrase, but I know that was just, I guess it's just a coined phrase that already exists. I don't know where it initially stems from. I'm sure it's like a psychological metaphor, but like I said, Inception was the first time I ever heard it. But I love that he's kind of like, okay, don't think about Kitterman, don't think about your girlfriend's dad being responsible for your murder. Then he starts focusing on Nora. It's like, man, she's so beautiful. Oh God, great. That's, it's just, like, let's kind of forget about that. That was weird. That was awkward. Let's move on. So it's like something like that the last thing you want is that out and about. So ultimately I love their way of like dispensing it, ended up being the means of which they ended up learning so much, because Nathan was like, all right, let's see who's thinking about me right now. Turns out the person that is David Choke. So it's like, interesting. Like he was weird, rich guy, never took you as the evil rich guy, but I guess it's like, well, to be fair, your girlfriend's dad is an evil rich guy, but still, like, he seemed like the weirdo, very eccentric rich guy, and the way he always acted around Nathan. That's why Nathan's like, yeah, dude must have been laughing, chuckling it up, like seeing me and having no idea that knowing the truth about myself and stuff. So yeah, he had something to do with it, because it turns out the person he's talking to is the guy that tried to kill Nathan last season, the assassin that went after Nora that ended up dead, but luckily they had uploaded him. So I don't know what, like, they took him away, but I don't know if he's just somewhere in Lakeview or whether they're just stashing him somewhere and keeping him hidden. But because they're still under the impression that at least, so he's the person that Ingrid's dad went to go visit last episode. But yeah, they were both involved in all of this, and they wanted to kill Nathan. And for him, it's just like, right, this guy, he's my neighbor, and he's the one that was responsible. Your killer was a lot closer to you than you thought. Well, you already thought your killer was fairly close to you because it's your girlfriend's dad, but now it's like, cool, the guy you ended up being kind of next door neighbors to room-wise is your killer as well, so. And that's the whole thing of, like, they're still not fully sure what this was all about. You'd assume it's like a money thing. It has to stem from that, but in what means and what manners, like what's the exact details? Because that gives us potentially a vague notion of why they did it, because evil, greed, want to make more money type of thing of like whatever it is Nathan was going to do. Like, well, his approach to it, and I think maybe that's also supposed to be like the red herring of like Chokes, is that he was the one in episode 2 being like, oh yeah, I agree with Nathan's point of view. And it's like, once again, a wolf in sheep's clothing type of thing of like, yeah, like you don't see the threat when it's kind of right underneath your nose. So he's meant to be like, oh, I'm a friend, I'm an ally, yada, 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 just so you don't suspect me. I guess it was also his way of proving, because luckily Nathan, because he was like, oh, Nathan, you worked on something like that, right? And then both Ingrid and Luke were like, no, my buddy wouldn't come up with something like that, trying to be like, yeah, his memories are fried and stuff like that. So it's also interesting too, because I remember the recap from the beginning of this season. Chokes is the one that suggested he was murdered in the first place. So once again, I guess trying to really see if he really remembered anything, and like I guess like if he goes looking and searching, all we have to do is, well, make sure, like, well, just to make it better for ourselves, we get to see whether or not he remembers anything. But then, given the opportunity, we'll wipe him from the board just so we can make sure his memories never do come back. Because it's like I said, he's the one that started him on this whole search to begin with. So it is kind of ironic. But like I said, it could have just been a test to see, like, okay, do you actually remember anything? And what do you remember type of thing, so. But as I was bringing up, they were never going to be able to kind of stop the rollout of the mind frisk, but they were able to, by leaving, I thought they did it by accident, but they did it on purpose. And I love Nora signed it like, oh, Robin Hood and the Black Widow. They ended up leaving the security turned off when it came to David Choke's thoughts, so everyone can hear it. So it's like, right, if his gets compromised, he's going to be the one to tell you like, hey, shelve that for right now, because he's rich and powerful enough that like if he's complaining about it, he's like, right, we're not going to be able to go all full speed ahead with this right now. So at the very least, like, I don't know if it completely shelves it, but it shelves it for now until they can probably potentially, because I don't think that's a temporary solution. I don't know if it's like because they were hoping to find something that would, because they were going to be like, oh, let's put some viruses in it, was kind of what Nathan was suggesting. But I guess this is enough that it's like, okay, it's too much of an issue that if it's faulty like this, it shows that it shouldn't be run out yet until we do more tests to kind of fix it. Maybe that's the justification. That's the thought process behind they handled it. Once again, even Nathan was kind of like, oh man, this is kind of terrible and this is scary. But even Nora was kind of like, oh, this is awesome technology, because she's looking at it from the technological standpoint of like not just the application of it, but just like what it means and it's like, oh man, this is dope. As a tech person, it's like, oh, like tech does a lot of good in our lives. Once again, you could make the argument that's just a more optimist in her, not looking at the realism of how it will be applied and used, So that was interesting. And then we also have the C plot with Ingrid, because I completely forgot to talk about this last episode, that she went to the therapy dog, and I love that the therapist went out being like, oh, Ingrid thinks she's lovable, and everyone in the office is laughing. I was like, that's super effed up. What about doctor-patient confidentiality? That went out the window. But either way, she's making a fuss because she wants a baby. It's supposed to be a step process. If you start on a lower tier, you kind of work your way up. It's the most expensive tier of just being able to get the baby, but she wants it now, so. And obviously that baby stuff is so nightmare fuel inducing. It's that uncanny valley, because basically they're putting someone else's face, the AI dude's face, on top of the baby, and it's just like so weird. Especially when they age it up, and it's like his face on like some teenage kid's, like a preteen or teen's body. It's just like, oh, it's so ugh. But I thought it was so interesting how they're rapidly aging the kids. So it's a little WandaVision, a little Legion. There's even because I know there's a Rick and Morty bit that's about VR where you're basically playing a game, but you're living an entire life type of situation. I won't go into specifics about the other examples I was making, but there's a very Legion specific situation that kind of plays in the same regard. But it's like, yeah, like the moment like he was getting older and older, I'm like, are we going to go the whole? It's like, yep, we went the full life route, and like, truth be told, it's a couple hours because it was like she got the baby like overnight, and then like the next day, it's like an old dying man, and it's like that's crazy. I mean, because she was just kind of like, trying to put the baby to sleep because it was too much. I even love how Nathan was like, oh yeah, like she wanted some alone time so she can work on deciding out how we should go forward as a couple. And Nora was like, by herself. It's like, yeah. So, but because she didn't bother going to Nathan because I guess she wanted to kind of prove on her own that she can handle this. But it's like, yeah, you were just looking for the off switch when it came to the baby. And then the child gets older and more energetic. And because of that, you're not... I mean, you'd already be having a tough time if you were an actual upload, but you're actually a human plugged into all of this, so it just makes it that much more tiring. But like I said, the child getting older, even getting to his rebellious phase, but now it's like, he's dying now. And she's like, no, I'll pay whatever it takes, just rewind it. And she had to watch her child die, after a couple hours. And for him to be like, can you give me a name? She's like, no, and he's like, Noah, I like that, and dies and disappears. I was like, Jesus, that's so traumatic. That's so effed up. Because she also went through that alone. I mean, she had a little time with her grandmother, but her grandmother's just kind of like, oh yeah, like find help. And it's like, there's always going to be help. And it's like, thank you. It's like, no, I wasn't talking about me. I mean actual help. Like call an angel or somebody to like come help you deal with the baby thing. So... But it's like, yeah, that's the last scene we got with Ingrid in this episode was her watching her, like, artificial child grow old and die. It's like I said, that is trauma-inducing. What that means for Ingrid going forward, I have no idea. I'm curious to see it, like, because Nathan was like, right, we'll do it eventually. But now, like, she might be traumatized and never want to do it again. She's like, no, we're not doing that because I've already went through that. I had to go through it alone. I'm not going through that again. So you're right to us not having a child, but it's like, obviously she wants to continue that. I mean, this was a baby that didn't look anything like, I don't think it took their features. It still grew up to be like, the AI person, but because I think this was kind of like a trial run, right? Because if it didn't look like Nathan or her, so I think when the real time comes, it'll happen. But I think that'd be even more trauma inducing if something that looks like them. Yeah, that's a lot. So we'll have to wait to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.